And joining us now, Grand Chief Angus Toulouse. He is Ontario Regional Chief for the Assembly of First Nations, and we're grateful you could come into TVO tonight. Let's start at the beginning. Why do you think the new incoming harmonized sales tax, taking effect July 1st of this year, violates the treaty rights of Ontario's First Nations people?
Well, we signed treaties on the basis as nations. 1764, the Treaty of Niagara, collected or brought together nations from across this country, certainly from across Ontario anyways, that got together and sat down with the Crown representative of the day and talked about how we were there as nations and again how we needed to live on this what we called Turtle Island together, and talked about a relationship is what it talked about, and the fact that we were sovereign, that we had our own laws, we were the nations that were here certainly prior to any of the Crown governments coming in.
I understand all that, but have you not had nation-to-nation negotiations with the governments on this?
Oh, yes. No, we haven't. Let me just say that this is the issue. The issue is that both governments have failed in their duty to consult the First Nations.
Well, the Supreme Court has ruled that governments can change treaty rights after consulting the affected people. You have been consulted, so why can't they do it?
Well, they haven't consulted. And the reason why I say that, we're asserting a right that we're sovereign. We're asserting a right that we have our own laws. We're asserting a right that we've always had our own self-governance prior to the imposition of the Indian Act. And so what we're essentially wanting to remind government is that when they're thinking about a piece of legislation or something that's going to impact our rights, we're saying at that point is when their duty to consult, they're obligated to.
Well, it sounds like we've got a bit of a disagreement over what consultation means. I mean, the government would say consultation means we met with you, we talked with you. You may not agree with us in the end, but we've talked. Have you not talked at all?
No, not prior to the agreement. See, what we're saying is that both levels have already agreed. They signed a memorandum of agreement. They signed a comprehensive integrated tax agreement, and then they come knocking on the door and say, "Let's talk. Let's talk now."
Gotcha. So as far as you're concerned, that's too late at that point.
It's too late at that point, which is why we really wanted a small amendment to the legislation that was passed by both governments. And the small amendment would have guaranteed that the point of sale exemption that we enjoy right now was going to be maintained.
A lot of people don't know what that means, so just explain. Aboriginal Canadians enjoy what you call a point of sale exemption,
yes.
Which means what?
Which means that the 8% that the provincial sales tax that is currently there, we were exempt from. And it's this relationship that we've always had with the provincial government, recognizing that we have been here. We were not subject to the taxation of the provincial government, and again they've recognized that right.
And the way that works is an Aboriginal Canadian would walk into a store.
Yes, we're going to Canadian Tire,
right.
Produce a card, purchase what they need, take it back to their First Nation community, and
you wouldn't have to pay the tax.
You wouldn't have to pay the tax.
But now you will.
Yes.
And you're objecting to that.
Absolutely. We're talking about the most marginalized people. We're talking about as much as 80 to 90% of some of the communities having their people relying and dependent on social assistance. And we're talking about people that can barely make ends meet with $200 a month. And you're going to tax that? That's what's really disturbing.
You tell me if I've got this wrong, because if I understand this properly, you can still avoid paying that tax by hanging onto your receipts, submitting them, and getting the money back. Can you not do that?
Not necessarily, because even that rebate, what you're talking about, is some kind of rebate system. That's not in place even in this particular agreement. And not that that's the answer. The answer is what we believe the Premier of Ontario, the Finance Minister, and the Revenue Minister, and also the Aboriginal Affairs Ministers have said, is that we believe and we want to ensure you maintain your point of sale exemption. That is the way forward, which is the status quo, what we're talking about in relation to at least having that relationship, having that kind of understanding as to how we exercise our treaty rights here in Ontario.
Okay, but you know that the province is now out of this game, right? This is now a new tax, or will be a new tax come July, that will be collected by the federal government.
Yes.
The province is out of the business. So is your responsibility now as a Grand Chief to lobby the federal government for this exemption? Because the province is out of the game now.
Yes, and this is where we're not getting the kind of a cooperation, if you will, to sit down. We have the Premier of Ontario, again, along with the Finance Minister, writing to their counterparts in the federal government to sit down with us, to sit down with the First Nation leadership.
So they recognize your claim?
Yes, they recognize our claim. They recognize that this is something that can be maintained. This is something that's achievable. And with even right now, administratively, it's achievable if the federal government was to sit down and talk to us and talk about how they're going to administer this new harmonized sales tax. It's still very achievable if we could only get the finance minister and both finance ministers to sit down with the First Nation leadership.
Will you sue them if they don't?
Yes, we have no choice. There is a legal recourse that we're going to have to undertake, and some of the work is already underway. But we don't necessarily have to go there. You know, that's a huge cost. We would rather see the political will be exercised here, the political will to continue to have the kind of reconciliation work that we're saying we're underway in Ontario. That's the political will we need.
Now, of course, the harmonized sales tax is new for the province of Ontario, but it's in place in other provinces, particularly in the Maritimes. Did you go through all this then when they brought that tax in several years ago?
Yes, I believe the Atlantic First Nations raised many objections in terms of the same concerns.
And do they maintain their point of sale exemption?
There is some point of sale exemption that is going on. I'm not sure exactly how it's working, but there is some. But also in the province of Quebec, you got to remember that again, they're doing business in different ways. The province that collects. It's not the federal government that administers the harmonized sales tax in that particular province. So there are, I guess, different approaches in each of the provinces. And all we're saying in Ontario is that we have the provincial government agreeing with us that let's convince the federal government to continue with the point of sale exemption.
20 years ago was the last time, I guess, we went through a major sales tax reform in this country when the goods and services tax was brought in. Did you go through all of this at that point too?
Absolutely. We objected fiercely, but it's still an outstanding issue with the First Nation leadership.
So that has not been resolved?
That's not been resolved.
You don't have point of exemption,
point
of sale exemption for the GST?
There is for goods that are being delivered onto the reserve, and most of the times those are just the big ticket items. And we're talking about people that habitually go to the nearby towns because there is not enough retail outlets in our First Nation communities, and they'll go spend the money every day. And we're saying that those retailers, I don't think are going to take the added cost of delivering the goods to the First Nation community. So, which is again this whole issue around the portability of our rights to be able to go to a nearby town and return with our property to our First Nation communities.
But tell me this, Grand Chief, if at the end of the day you collect all your receipts and you submit them to the government for a rebate, then you're not paying the tax. So at the end of the day, are we not arguing here about a level of convenience? You want to have the exemption at the point of sale. The government at the moment doesn't seem prepared to do that, but they're prepared to rebate the money later. Is this a lot of effort for what at the end of the day is a wash?
No, our First Nations people don't, number one, a lot of them don't file taxes. They're on social assistance. Their property is non-taxable. And so they don't file income taxes. So to expect a rebate when they don't file the tax, and then to expect these individuals to collect their receipts in a shoebox over a year and then what, hire a bookkeeper? No, they don't have no money to hire a bookkeeper to assist them in terms of filing whatever it is they need to file to get the rebate. So that's a non-starter with our First Nation population.
So that point of sale exemption it is still a very big deal for you.
That is a very big deal, and many of our leaders have said that, you know, this is where we draw the line in the sand. We have the right as nations to proceed with our own self-governance, and we need to ensure that those treaties that were signed by our ancestors are fulfilled and enforceable. And again, which is what the youth and the leadership is reminding everyone here again today, that we need to have a better roadmap that talks about the kind of reconciliation in terms of how First Nation are going to play a bigger role in the economy. We just had an economic summit last week in Thunder Bay where we brought in the federal and provincial government along with industry and our First Nation entrepreneurs and talked about how do we move things ahead? How do we ensure that our First Nation leadership is heard when policy is being developed? And what we said is that we know unilateral imposition of policy on First Nation communities doesn't work. Let's try a different approach, which is what we did last week. And what we said is that in 6 months' time, let's see where we're at. Let's see if some of the input that we provided is being reflected in some of the policies that we're going to see take place that supports the kind of economic development that needs to take place in our traditional territories.
3 words. Or else what?
Direct action is the unfortunate thing, and or else that we continue to widen the gap in terms of the disparity between our First Nation citizens and the rest of Ontario and the rest of Canada.
Is it your view that, I mean, this tax is still 6 months away from coming in, 5.5 months away from coming in. Is it your view that you still think you can stop it altogether?
Our view is not to stop it. Our view is to maintain the point of sale exemption. That is what our citizens have asked of the leadership to maintain, and again, which is our objective. Our objective is to have government recognize our rights.
I get that, but do you think it's good public policy in the main to have these 2 taxes harmonized?
I believe that this is the will of government, as long as they don't tramp on our rights, as long as they have the understanding that they do have a duty to consult and accommodate our interests, which is what we're saying. Sit down with us, and I'm sure we can work out an amicable arrangement that maintains that.
Have you heard anything from the federal Conservative government as to why, so far, they don't want to see it your way?
No, we haven't, because we haven't sat down with them in a manner that we could hear that.
No explanation?
No explanation.
And no meeting yet with anybody?
No meeting at a political level that we've asked for. There's been some meetings that have gone on with the officials in trying to get them to, again, address how administratively we can do this. And again, the government officials at this point in time have essentially stuck their head in the sand and not wanting to look at options, not wanting to look at a better way forward that is, again, reflective of the wishes of the First Nations people in Ontario and provincial government.
I know you met, I guess back in December, with Andrea Horwath of the NDP at Queen's Park?
Yes, we did.
Have you met with Tim Hudak yet?
No, we haven't, but some of our chiefs have met with leader of the Conservatives in Ontario, Tim Hudak, and but we will meet with Tim Hudak again to have him appreciate where we're coming from, and have him appreciate that there hasn't been consultation at this point in time.
Let me do one last follow-up here on the direct action that you talked about a second ago, because after your meeting with Andrea Horwath last year, I guess a group of Aboriginals took to the streets of downtown Toronto in a bit of an impromptu demonstration that I guess inconvenienced some people, and you know, there was some speculation at the time that perhaps this wasn't the best way to get the general public on your side. Any regrets about how that went down?
Never any regrets when we bring the attention to the Canadian public. And again, our
But
First
if you
Nation,
alienate that public, is that helpful?
I don't think our intention is to alienate. Our intention is to educate. Our intention is to bring to the attention of Ontario. Certainly, just being camped out in front of Queen's Park doesn't do that. And our First Nation citizens are the ones that are moving that. And our First Nation citizens are saying that leadership, you need to step up more, or either that or step aside, and we'll essentially get the attention of government and of the people to, again, to sit down with us and to do what's right, which all this is all about.
One last thing, Grand Chief. How concerned are you that this is essentially a done deal, and that's it?
Well, they passed the legislation without an opportunity for hearings, at least sufficient hearings. I did present to both finance standing committees, provincially and federally, and to also the Senate committee, again expressing a need to have a small amendment to the legislation. But again, The agreement was there with all parties to proceed, which was unfortunate because it didn't allow us an opportunity to have a tiny amendment just to maintain what provincial government and the First Nation leadership is saying. Let's keep the point of sale exemption.
Okay, we'll continue to watch this with interest. Grand Chief Angus Toulouse from the Assembly of First Nations, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.